Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Phyto Revival, the podcast. And this week, we are actually going to be going over dealing with loss, whether it be a family member or even a pet, even though pets don't tend to have real estate, but also the generational expectations of what to do with the belongings that are on the real estate with the person or of what you're dealing with. Today, I have two guests on the phone. Or not on the phone, but we have two guests here. One is doing it remotely, and so we're testing that out. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Shoobi. She's actually coming back again, so this is her second time with me.
Yes, my name is Shoobi. I am a massage therapist. I am a metaphysical minister, and I think most of us can say that we've dealt with end-of-life situations, at least by the time you get to the age that we are.
Yes, no joke. And how old are you?
Oh man, I'm 46.
46.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm 40. And then the next guest is my cousin's wife, Jessica, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I have two girls, and my youngest son has end-stage renal failure. And so having to pretty much navigate how to go about things with him and the uncertainties of everything. It's pretty tricky.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And so, since we're talking about just loss today, when you've dealt with your most recent loss or somebody that you were really close to, what are things that you have observed on the behaviors and how people behave and what you would have liked to see or what would have been more ideal? Either of you want to answer that?
Oh, I think that grief and guilt play a large part in people's reactions to how they deal with a family member's passing. So I think that things can get a little uglier than they typically would in any other situation, because I think there is a lot of guilt tied into what should have been done better, whether that's true or imagined.
I can kind of go along with that as well, because what I've noticed, because I like to sit back and I observe, and I lost my dad when he was only 52 years old back in 2015, and there's not a lot of elders left anymore. But what I've noticed is the people that are very gung ho that it's going to be my way or no way, and instead of working on figuring out where the relationship is rocky and figuring out a compromise and handling it, that they just keep going headstrong, like this person needs to come to me. And then when something happens to that person, the guilt that they have that they didn't do more while they were here. And now they have questions and they want to hear the stories again, and they're not there anymore. And I feel like these individuals tend to become very, very materialistic. They need items from that person. They need to hold on to them because they, as the living, have unfinished business because of the way they treated someone who's now passed.
Well, and I think too that you can do everything completely right for somebody at the, end of life, but there's still going to be, I think guilt is just an intrinsic part of that process. And some people do need the physical thing to hold on to, help them process, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And some people are very physical, that they need to touch and they need to feel. I think that my biggest frustration, even more recently, is that I'm watching, it's been 10 years since my dad has passed away, and I have boxes of his stuff that were given to me, which I have been kind of sorting through, letting my kids pick and choose what they wanted as they became of the appropriate age. But then the question is, I look around, and even when my husband's grandparents died or his stepmom died, a lot of times we tend to get the stuff that no one else wants. And because that is all that my husband is offered, then he doesn't want to let go of it because that's all he does have. But then it doesn't match it's not really a connection to the item. It's more of the lack of belonging in relationship. And this was, you got crumbs.
Right.
But now that I'm like looking around my house, I'm like, how do I decorate around this? This isn't us. This isn't me. How long? It's like in everything you give someone when they pass away, it seems like you get it back. And I'm like, well, now I just want to kind of gift people adventures, go bowling. Here's a gift card to here. Like, because if I'm going to customize and make things for people and then they pass away and I get it back, but it's not customized for me.
Right.
It was customized for them. And this isn't something I'm into. This is something they were into. And now I have it. And then if you go on Facebook Marketplace or something and then decide that, you're going to let go of it because you got to declutter, because over life things just build up. And then someone sees it on Marketplace and then, oh my God, all the drama and all the craziness that ensues.
Yeah, interestingly, I'm kind of going through, like, I've been, I got bit by the spring cleaning bug, and I've been going through things, and I've looked around at my stuff, and it's been so hard to get rid of because, like, my grandmother died a year before I was born, and I have pieces from her that I like don't want to get rid of because it is like my only connection with her. However, how much of it do I really need? Like, I think this kind of also ties into our hoarding tendencies as a society. Like, we do not actually have to keep 100% of the things that are given to us. And if you have a family member who then takes exception to the fact that you prioritized what is important to you and they're upset about it, well, stay in your lane, cupcake. And especially if you're only getting the crumbs anyway and what everybody else didn't want, that is their issue that you really don't have any business being involved with.
And I also want to talk about, because it's definitely generational. So if you go back to the 1920s or the late 1800s, people didn't have a lot of things.
Right.
Everything that they got was a blessing, because if they couldn't build it and they couldn't grow it, you didn't have it.
Right.
Like, you couldn't just go to the store and buy things like you can today. And so when you think about inheritance as a traditional thing, then inheritance in that era would have been such a huge blessing. Whereas now, like you said, we have like a hoarding type of culture that now it's more of it's so much stress. You don't get to pick or choose. It's like someone opened the door and it's like, this is now your problem.
And everything is now so disposable. I mean, if you find a refrigerator from the 1950s, chances are it still works or needs some minor tweaking to continue working. You buy a refrigerator 3 years ago and now it's like, done. You maybe get another couple years out of it. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but we do live in a very disposable society, and that stuff breaks down over time. I've helped several people clear out their hoards, and they think it has a use, but by the time they get to it, it's deteriorated. It just, we don't make stuff to last. So,
What are your thoughts, Jessica?
The worst in people when it comes to someone passing, not only with your guys' family, but also with mine. My family actually split due to how the funeral process went. And death seems to bring out sometimes the worst in people and sometimes their true colors. And it becomes all about, well, I had this type of relationship with them and it was better than yours, so I deserve to have more stuff from them. Kind of like what you said.
It's like a sense of entitlement to other people's belongings.
Interestingly, so I am a massage therapist, and one of the continuing education opportunities that I've had that I was really interested in, but I just have had all of my hours in for this renewal period, was being a death doula. And what that means, like, a doula is typically for birthing, right? It helps the mother, you're kind of an advocate. Well, it's that in reverse. So it's like a death doula will help the person who is passing advocate for their own end of life, because it is something we don't talk about a lot, and people, I think, our own mortality frightens us, so we just avoid it. Like, as people are getting closer to passing, they stop being touched, people stop talking to them. And I think it is our own intrinsic fear of our own mortality. But it's like, I really think that end of life process, if we're blessed enough to know that we are coming to the end of our life and it's not a sudden thing, doing those things before you pass, having your funeral arrangements. I mean, we're all going to find something to argue about anyway, but, getting your stuff sorted so that isn't your family's problem.
Yeah, because then the family can focus on grieving, and it's like, nope, here's the outline of what's going to happen. We're just going to follow the outline, and then they can focus on their emotions. But even like Jessica's mother-in-law, like she goes into almost a mode of, okay, we lost somebody. She doesn't always process the loss right away. She's about, okay, let's go through the checklist on what we have to cover. And she shoves her emotions down and back. But what people don't realize that that energy is still pushing through, even though you're pushing it down.
Right.
And like death, like both of you have touched base on that, death tends to bring out, I think, stress in general. Any type of very stressful situation brings out people's true character on how they handle things. And I recently went through a situation where my brother has one of the belongings of my father in a storage shed, and because of the economy and job related issues that he had gotten behind on the payment, and people were contacting me about being the savior and the rescuer. But I found it a little bit astonishing that the focus was on a material possession and not the human that was still here that was actually struggling.
Right.
And why do we as a society tend to put these material possessions above the actual needs of the people that are still here?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think too, like, I think that, like you said, this hoarding, like, I think everyone does it. When we had a foreign exchange student and we were in Walmart, I don't shop there a lot, but we were in Walmart, and she made the comment, she goes, "Do you guys just always spend money on stupid stuff?"
Yes.
Like as a culture, because we were in
Yes.
Walmart, we weren't in my house.
Right.
I tend to be very mindful. That's why I don't send out greeting cards. Why? Because you're going to spend $7 on a greeting card for what? For them to read once, throw it away. It's not handwritten. It's usually just a very generic copy and paste. But as a culture, we're like, oh, this is cute. It's only $1. It's only $2. It's only $10. And we justify buying it. But then you get it home and it's like, well, shit, well, now where do I put it?
Right.
Where does it belong?
If I was independently wealthy, one of the ways in which I would spend my time, other than volunteering for animals, because hello, but I would go help hoarders, help do hoarder cleanouts, because and this is tragic too, when a family member passes, and if they're a hoarder, like if they're a level 9 hoarder, that can cost the family upwards of $10,000.
Yep.
And a lot of families aren't prepared to drop that kind of money to clear out a house. And I mean, depending on where you're located, if you're more rural, it is going to take more money to get a dumpster to your property.
Yep.
And then, they might not be able to come and pick it up like quick enough. You could fill a 20-yard dumpster in half of a day with some of these houses, and especially depending on the type of a hoard it is. And I mean, I just think that that's something as society we need to keep our eye on the prize. Like, there will always be, I don't think somebody should give away 100% of everything they own if they know they're dying. Like, you still want to be comfortable in your surroundings, but just like be mindful of the potential headache you are leaving for your family. Like, clearing out a house that is appropriately appointed is one thing. Cleaning out a level 9 hoard that takes your entire family and breaks their heart to know that you were living in that, that.
And I did kind of address this with my husband too, because I was like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the house and we're going to touch an item. And if you don't feel any excitement and you don't feel connected to that item, it's going to go into a different pile. I go, because if it's not bringing you excitement, why do we have it here?
Right.
Like, this is our home. This is our castle. It's our sanctuary. So, and then there's things that mean a lot to him, but I don't have that connection with it, but I respect his connection with it. But the other items and furniture that he's not connected to, he just feels bad. Like, I have my mother-in-law's wedding dress. I never even got a wedding dress because we got married just as a piece, but he was holding it for his sister because he was like, she's going to get rid of this and one day she's going to want to be connected and she might want this back. So he's holding it for her, but she never wanted it.
Right.
So I still have it. So, and I told him, I go, and then what happens if something with that happens to us? What do you think the kids are going to do? It definitely, if it doesn't have any value to you directly and the kids have no direct connection to it, why are we holding on to it? For them to throw it away?
Right.
For them to dispose of it?
Right.
Like, and then the amount of guilt, how you are, this is, I think, my biggest problem and my inspiration about this. Why is it that it's almost like I have to be accountable for every item that was given to me and where it's at and the condition it's in?
Right.
And it's like, then why did you give it to me?
Right. And if you didn't ask for it, and even if you did, we change. We are not stagnant beings. Like, we change, we evolve, and what fit us before doesn't continue to fit us forever. So that, like, for example, a wedding dress, like, I'm like, okay, I don't have the attachment to the wedding dress, but my kids might think it's cool later down the line. So why don't I take some of, the skirt and make a photo album cover with it? And then you're honoring the piece and, whatever, or give it to somebody who will wear it, who does need a wedding dress in a couple of months that can't afford anything, like.
And then you do have the family members too that look at it and go, oh, that's probably worth about $800. I want that. Or that's going to be, I need to make sure this stuff is in my name before the person passes, or at least my name is on the title or my name is on the mortgage. So when they pass, nobody else gets this. I've already state claim. And that type of preying on your own loved ones is a different level of disrespect to me. So, and so now, if you were to pass away, how would you envision your kids taking care of your estate?
My kids know that, whatever, like, whatever they want, they can have. Honestly, the only the only thing that, like, they know, if it's written, burn it, don't read it, just burn it.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, and nope, you don't want to know. And then the only thing I really have that is of value to me, that is, other than, like, again, items from my past family members who they don't have any connection to, would be my tarot card collection. And, like, I'm not going to care.
Now, have you guys ever thought about appointing someone you trust? And I know that these people that you trust can vary, but always have someone that you're like, in case anything happens to me, there is this box. It looks like this. You need to take it and destroy it before my family gets in the house.
I had that. I did have that set up, but that person is no longer in my life. And I haven't I just told my husband actually yesterday, I was like, this right here, if something happens to me, just burn it. Bonfire, burn it. He's like, got you.
Because I'm thinking, like, even sometimes, like, especially adult play stuff, or things that you really don't want
history.
Yes, you don't want your daughter to come in and be like, oh my God, who was this person? Like, okay, no judgment.
Right. Right.
So yeah, so I've seen that too. Anything you want to add, Jess?
Oh.
So much.
Yeah, I know. That's why I love you.
Speaking more of, like, the hoarder side, I wouldn't really consider myself a hoarder, but I do have hoarder tendencies. I keep things that I really have no business keeping.
But acknowledging that is actually the first step in getting in control of it. You're aware.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. It's not really doing much yet, but hopefully one day it'll get there.
Okay, so My philosophy is if it's a craft supply, that does not count as hoarding, nor does gardening supply.
Or plants. Yeah.
Yeah. Plants or gardening or crafts.
I don't know. Craft supplies can get a little out of hand. When you have a bigger supply than Hobby Lobby or Michael's, you might have a problem.
We don't talk about that, Des.
Okay, got it. Yeah, we're going to have our red room, but it's really just a craft room.
Right. That's my life.
Garage sale probably sometime last year. And my sister had a bunch of her shirts and stuff out there that she was selling. And I noticed that she had put some of her shirts out there, not on to like be sold, but like to be tossed and get rid of. And they were like her old camp t-shirts that, her friends had signed from there or from school or whatnot. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you giving that away? Why wouldn't you want to keep that and have those memories? And so I took them so I could surprise her with them later or like make them into like a blanket or something. And then after hearing you guys, I was like, why am I keeping that?
And you don't.
Well, but I think she would, that would be an awesome thing to give her a quilt, and it takes up less space than those like 7 shirts or whatever. And, like,
unless there is still a negative, maybe there's somebody that energy of that item is connected to that they don't want, that they're trying to disconnect from. So unless knowing the story on why they're getting rid of it, you could be almost opening up a Pandora's box of trauma as well. Yeah. And you got to remember too, this is their journey in life. So if they chose to get rid of something, there's a natural consequence of every decision. And you got to remember that's a choice that they made. And if it's not directly attached to you. Now, my kids, they're a lot younger. My kids did not want me to buy every single yearbook. And as soon as they got to a point where the school's relying on them to give me the information, they don't give me the information, so they haven't been getting the last couple years of yearbooks. But for the longest time, I was adamant that they needed every single yearbook because I'm like, they're going to want this. They're going to want to go back through it. And I know that that's one thing, but even my oldest, I find that his little ID cards and stuff, he'll just throw them away. I find them, I put them in a little box. Mm-hmm. Because to me, photos are something that you can never get back. But if it was like, I don't know, like his McDonald's hat that he has to wear, then you know what? Just let it go.
All right.
You got to pick and choose. Now, to me, if it's something that I can fit in the palm of my hand, it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to take up much space. But I can't museum his life because I also don't want them to become overly attached to material possessions.
Right. But I do feel like, in Jessica's case, if, she felt the impetus to grab those, I also think that, there is the potential that she's a messenger in her sister's life.
That's true,
like,
too.
You know what? It's, time for you to revisit what you're not wanting to look at here. And while that's not exactly our responsibility, I do believe that the divine works that way sometimes.
Or like kind of like the butterfly in China makes a wave here in the US type situation. It could be that when she does finally decide to go donate it, maybe someone's signature, they recognize the next person that picks it up and it ends up having a completely different vibe for them.
Right.
So I think discernment and just really being honest with yourself, am I doing this through ego or am I doing this because I feel like it's something bigger?
Right.
So anyway, well, I would say that we really just covered a lot of different avenues. We want to go around, and any last words?
I don't know. No, not really. Just that I think all of, end of life things have their own, unique points to navigate. And like you said, I think you really just need to go with your gut and use your intuition on what is appropriate for you, and don't let other people's opinions sway what you feel is right. If they were so concerned about it, then they could have said something right.
How about you, Jess? Any last words?
I've had conversations with my husband, like if one of us were to pass, just because we've seen just how nasty people can be with possessions when that person has died. I told him that if I go before you, no one is to take absolutely anything without one, your permission, or we have it written down that is supposed to go to them. And no one can take anything of yours, mine, without at least both of us being gone or having some form of permission to go ahead and take it. Because if, like with my grandpa, when he passed, people came over and just started rummaging through all of his stuff and even taking memories from my grandma to where she can't even look back on those things anymore because people have taken.
Yeah, taking them before the partner was ready to part.
Now, unless, they give it to them, then that's one thing. But if they're hesitant, don't take that stuff.
Yeah.
Let them grieve the way that they need to. And when they're ready to let it go, they'll let it go. Or you can just wait until they go. It drives me nuts when people try to take something from the other person, their partner, when they're still here.
Oh man, I think that could be a whole nother podcast.
It really could.
Like, grandma passed away and I don't agree with what her boyfriend wants to keep. Well, you know what? That was your grandmother's decision. So
And I think too that if they do decide to let go of it, in their head, they need to envision it already burned up in a fire.
Right.
Because when you let it go and it's in someone else's possession and you're trying to micromanage that possession, that is almost it's a strong sense of being narcissistic, and almost even in a way it's an abusive behavior, because you're like, I'm giving you this, but I still emotionally and energetically am in control of it, and you have to give me answers when I ask. And to me, that's just not okay. So if you decide to let it go, you've let it go. It's burned up. You put a fire to it. It's gone. Forget that it exists because it's no longer part of your estate.
And we just, in general, I think, need to stop trying to fill the hole with possessions, with stuff.
Yeah, we definitely need to. And I always tell people, when you're listening to someone talk, are you listening to respond to what they're saying? Are you listening to understand where they're coming from? And when you listen to understand, that means you are listening to understand to a point that you can come up with a compromise and increase the bond. When you're listening to respond, that's your ego. You're just trying really to prove that you're right. And it's a very isolating behavior. And then when you've isolated and iced out everyone around you, don't go around then crying because nobody knows who you are, or you didn't get what you thought you deserved because, like you said, this hierarchy that we put in our families.
Right.
But all right, well, this is going to be it for us today, and I do appreciate both of you guys for joining me. And it was kind of a interesting discussion, and I just felt like, this is something that we need to talk about. We need to regulate this more, because when people are so attached to material possessions, and then a flood or a hurricane or a natural disaster or a fire or something destroys it, they get into a mental state that is almost impossible to get back out of. And a lot of times that's what triggers the hoarding.
Right.
And even worse behaviors, because it was taken from them. So you got to find value in the people while they're still living. I had one aunt, and I know I'm kind of going over right now, but I had one aunt tell me when I said that I probably wouldn't be coming and visiting as much to Kansas because it's a long drive and my kids are getting older, and so my life is changing. She goes, well, I hope you'll at least come back for my funeral. And I'm like, so you want me to come see you when you're no longer here? Because my beliefs in death is this is your shell, this is your car that you are driving around here on earth in. You're not there. You may be there still somewhere, but you are not attached and tethered to that body. And so I'm like, but why isn't that same enthusiasm about me or her or anybody right here, right now, in the moment, in the living, and trying to make things better? Why just go back to a funeral?
Right.
Because the funeral is for the living. It's not for the dead.
Right.
So anyway, I want to thank you guys again. It was actually pretty fun. And yeah.
Thanks.
So that's
Thanks
it.
for having us.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.